Hello and welcome to another episode of the Expert CPG Commerce Podcast. My name is Ryan Flynn, the founder and CEO of Expert CPG Commerce, where we help brands reach more customers on Amazon and beyond. And today I am super excited to welcome Paul Kleinschmidt from Yeshi Foods to the program. Yeshi is a fantastic vegan, gluten-free salad dressing that has had tremendous growth in Canada, particularly British Columbia, where they started, Vancouver Island. And it's growing wildly throughout Canada, and now it's reaching into the States and soon to be Florida, which we'll hear about. Florida's a big point of motivation for Paul. I hear that today on the show. It's a neat little story here. A great story, actually, a very personal story that Paul shares, and I'll probably catch you right at the beginning, so can't wait to share that. And if you're a brand that's growing, and you're growing regionally, nationally, and you're trying to do it all and do it all well, usually Amazon's a part of that, right? You have to be on Amazon. And you may be doing it internally, maybe you work with an agency, and you're like, am I doing everything I could be on Amazon? We read a lot of brands that are at that stage, or they're just like, I don't think I am doing everything I can be doing. Or, they know they're not, someone tells them they're not. They just have a pit in their stomach. They're like, we're not doing everything we could be on Amazon. So we are an Amazon agency at Expert CPG Commerce. We help brands with Amazon, and we want to actually show you what you can be doing on Amazon, not just tell you we can help you with Amazon. So we perform and provide an in-depth full audit of your Seller Central account, showing you all the opportunities you're missing and things that aren't working on Amazon, but mostly it's uncovering new opportunities that just a lot of brands aren't taking advantage of. And it's really eye-opening for brands to see they think they're doing all these things well, and to see that maybe they could be doing things a lot differently or better margins, cheaper, whatever it may be, faster. And so we want to show you that. So just go to expertcpg.com/audit and put in some information, and we'll get back to whether or not you qualify, and happy to provide you with that audit and actually show you what you could be doing. Again, expertcpg.com/audit. All right, let's get on to today's episode with Paul. Paul, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate being able to tell the story.
Yeah, no, that's what we love hearing on these types of episodes. Is there's a lot of other business-focused podcasts out there, and we can talk, I'm sure you and I will talk about some very tactical things in regards to growing the brand, but it's fun just to hear, every brand story is a little bit different. It's fun to hear everybody's unique growth story. So if you don't mind, give a little background on yourself, kind of maybe even before the brand started and all that stuff.
Yeah, sure. So we started the brand in 2017, but prior to that, I'm an IT guy. I started in IT. I worked through multiple jobs when I was younger, entrepreneurial spirit type, but never really had the confidence to just go for it. So in 2011, I found out I have a really severe gluten intolerance. So it doesn't really affect me physically. It's more of an emotional response to it. So it affects my brain. I get really confused. So if I have gluten, it almost seems like I've been drinking.
Wow.
So get super confused, get super frustrated, right? And as a guy, that comes out as anger. So I would be like a road rager, okay? With zero confidence, and it probably comes from not having confidence, right? So in 2011, my wife and I, we were just about to get a divorce. We were like on the very end of our relationship. Told the kids already everything. They were young. They were 5 and 7. And we were like done. And for that Christmas, she bought me a book called Wheat Belly. People probably heard of the Wheat Belly book. Mm-hmm. Read the book between Christmas and New Year's. And of course, you read the book and you got the disease, right? So yeah. I'm like, hey, we got it. That's it, right? Yeah. So we decided we were going to go gluten-free at New Year's. And we just kind of did it. And I didn't really notice much of a difference until Valentine's Day came along. And we were going to order pizza for the family and whatnot. And they didn't have any more gluten-free crusts. So I was like, no, whatever, get the regular crust. And got home, had the pizza, everything. Well, I lost my mind. I had the biggest meltdown our family has ever seen, to the point where I threw a Coke bottle and it stuck into the drywall. That kind of a meltdown. Pulled the cabinet door off, this kind of thing. And everybody's scared. Everybody's confused. Nobody knows what's happening, including me. Everything settles down a couple of hours later. And I said to Barbara, that's the pizza. I can't think of anything else. The reason why, like, the room is spinning. I don't know what's happening, right? So the next day we obviously go back to a gluten-free diet and settle back down again. And then as an IT guy, as a troubleshooter, I was able to kind of go back in my mind every time there was an accident and say, oh, okay, well, what did I eat? Right? Because back then there was a lot less awareness around it. So there wasn't as much people talking about it or labeling around it. So I was like, well, what can I eat? I eat pepperoni sticks and corn chips for a couple of weeks. And then I was like, oh, I can have sushi. So I started eating sushi. Well, I had a meltdown. So I realized that, oh, soy sauce has a lot of gluten in it, this kind of thing. So 6 weeks later, you have another meltdown. And then slowly over time, you kind of figure out, well, the things you can eat and the things you can't eat. And then, of course, all the hidden things like maltodextrin and these kinds of things. And over the course of a couple of years, like I realized, well, beer started bothering me, right? I was fine with craft beers because they use barley. So there's less gluten in it. But then slowly that started to bother me. And then all of a sudden, so I cut out those, started drinking ciders, and I was okay with bourbon because bourbon's mostly corn. And then all of a sudden bourbon started to bother me, and then it got worse. And then the only thing I could drink was tequila and rum for a while. But it got so bad for me that even the grain alcohol, even so there's no gluten in it, it still bothered me, right? Obviously alcohol does the same thing, right? But I could tell that that anxiety would come back for 3 or 4 days on end.
Wow.
So over the few years of being gluten-free, I feel like I had a big confidence boost. Like my confidence started to come back after I think I started to heal or something.
Yeah.
You know, your brain starts to heal. You deal with problems in different ways. You're emotionally more stable. And so over that time, then I think I was able to actually act on a business idea that I had. Okay. So 2017 comes along. Barbara and I both work at a private high school that's like right beside our house. It's a boarding school, super high end. It's like 3rd or 4th in the country. And so Barbara worked in the kitchen. I worked in the IT department. We had a lot of freedom. It was a great environment for both of us. And this recipe kind of came up on their salad bar. And the way they do their kind of lunches is like the staff go first and the students kind of go after for lunch.
Yep.
Well, this salad dressing pot, the students would never get to taste it because it was always empty before they got there. So my entrepreneurial brain is like, wow, that's pretty good market research. Like, maybe there's a thing here. So Barb brought it home. She made it gluten-free. And we started just kind of having it at home for, I don't know, a year, just about a year. And I said to her, we got to sell this. Like, we got to start. And there were people at work that were like, I don't even want to have salad anymore if there's no, if that dressing isn't part of it, right? Mm-hmm. So I bugged her for about a year, right? And she's finally like, yeah, fine, go do it then. So I just started doing research. I mean, I don't know anything about CPG. I don't know anything about the food industry, retail, I don't know anything about that.
Yeah.
So got a little license here. You need a little license to sell at the farmer's market. So bought the little farmer's market thing and bought a booth for the summer at a farmer's market right in Victoria, British Columbia. And it sold out every week. We sold out.
Wow.
So I was like, oh, wow, this is kind of great market testing now. Right? Proving the model.
Well, first of all, let me back up a second. Like, first of all, thanks for sharing your personal story there. I mean, that's an amazing journey you went through, right, as an individual to, face some of those. It's kind of scary, right? When you look in the mirror, like you realize you think you're the problem, but there's something outside affecting it, right? But then that, in a way, that's kind of a relief, but it's also kind of like. It's also a little scary too, like how am I gonna, live life through this? But so thanks for sharing your story, number one. And then also, when you started to get that traction, I'm curious, the farmer's market, was it? I mean, could you always tell deep down inside that this was gonna be something more than like just you trying out and selling this product, or was the farmer's market that first? Oh my gosh, we definitely have something here when you kept selling out.
No, like I didn't know. I was just trying something, right?
Yeah.
Like I had multiple business ideas in the past and I could never get myself to actually start them. So I always had the curiosity of doing that and now what I could do kind of a thing. So it was just more along the lines of let's go make a few $100 and see what we can do with it. Right. So I had no no thoughts of like, oh, this is a thing, right?
Yeah.
Took me a little while longer to get to that point.
You're tied to it a lot personally, but what was it about this idea? I'm curious compared to other ones you maybe had in the past that I'm sure you can probably touch on some challenges and, with product development and everything else, but like, what was it about this product that you kept going? And if you don't mind sharing that.
Barbara was on board. So at the time, our daughter was in grade 10. Our son had just graduated. He was going to university, and my daughter, Taya, she was going to Brentwood College, which is the school we worked at.
Sure.
And there they basically go to school from 8 in the morning till 10 at night, right? It's not all school, but there's sports and, there's homework time and all that stuff. But she would just hang out there with her friends. They're all boarding and she's a day student. So we were basically empty nesters at this point, right? And we knew it was coming because she's only got 2 years left. So I was like, oh, I don't want to like sit around and just hang out on the couch and wait for, retirement or whatever. So I wanted to do something with Barb that was us doing it together, like a project that we could kind of flow into our retirement. And so when she finally said, yeah, let's do it, then I was like, okay, well, just so long as we know that this is going to be a lot of hard work and we're both in it together. So that was the biggest part of the reason why this one. Yeah. So it was mostly that we could do it together as a couple. And it actually connected us quite a bit more, right? Than separating us from what people say about their relationships, how business kind of gets in the way and that kind of thing. But because we're both involved completely, then that makes it so much better. Yeah.
No, that's a great vantage point to have and a great way to look at it, right? Is like you guys are in together and it's something it's almost like another child, right? Like you've got this newborn and you've got to grow it, you've got to rear it and all that good stuff. All right. So I took us on a little tangent there, but I want to stop there and touch on that. So you're in the farmer's market, you were selling every weekend. What happened after that?
Vancouver Island is very local focused. If there's something that somebody's doing that's local, it doesn't really matter what it is. Kind of everybody wants to support them.
Sure.
Right. And it comes from being off the mainland and, having its own kind of little economy and that kind of thing. So our customers that were coming back, and they would come back every week. We had like multiple customers coming back, and it's salad dressing. I told you that. I was like, you're coming back, you're buying 3 or 4 bottles at a time. I'm like, what's happening here? They were like, you got to get it into the stores because up here, the farmer's market ends in September.
Yeah.
So they're like, you got to get this into retail because what am I going to do in October? Right. And so I'm like, I never even thought about retail. Don't know anything about retail. I didn't even know I needed a commercial kitchen to sell into retail. Right. So you go to your first store and they're like, oh, do you have a commercial kitchen? I'm like, no. So now I got to go find a rental space. Right. So you go and rented a commercial kitchen in the little town that's about 20 minutes from where we are, pack all of our stuff in there and we made 250 bottles or whatever it was. And I just walked up to the store, the store right down the street. And I said, here's a bottle of dressing, one for you and one for the manager. And the cashier, she's like, okay, I'll give it to the manager. Next thing I know, I got a call. Right. So it was like the same day. So we got our first store. I think that was like by the end of August or something like that in 2017. And then I was like, wow, that worked. I don't think you're supposed to do that really, but that worked here. So I did that with 3 or 4 other stores and boom, they all took it right away. So, and then I'm obviously always starting to think, okay, well, I can't drive up and down this island delivering this. I have to change the business model. Like I have to figure something out for distribution. And obviously that doesn't happen overnight because those guys don't want to talk to you yet, right? I mean, you got 4 stores, nobody wants to talk to you, right? So I started pushing into, I went into Victoria. We're a little bit north of Victoria. So I went into Victoria, I went to a few of those stores in there and I ended up with a 6-store chain. So, and they're like all over it. They're putting 3 and 4 different displays in their store, local products and all this kind of thing. And at this time, I'm like, actually prior to this, because from the farmer's market, I needed to have a UPC code. You needed to have all your stuff on there, right?
Yep.
Compliances and all that, those kinds of things. And I just got the marketing person from where I worked to do a bunch of labeling stuff for me for a bottle of wine. And the other marketing guy who does their website, he built a website for me for a case of beer. And that kind of thing. And it was just getting a UPC code. I had to go and just sit and do a bunch of research for that kind of stuff with GS1 and just figure it out, and NFTs, that kind of thing. You have to have an NFT. So I just found a website, did all the compliance stuff myself for it. And I mean, I'm an IT guy. I work on the computer all the time, right? So I don't have a problem just doing that stuff. And then, of course, the label design was done by that lady in marketing. So it just kind of seemed to all work out. And so by the time we get this 7-store chain, we're going twice a week now up to the commercial kitchen to do product in the evening after our work, right?
Yeah,
so we got to cart all of our stuff up there because they're busy. They don't have any room for us to store anything there. So we cart everything up, do this, cart everything back. And then we started getting a few more stores and then a couple more. And then I was like, okay, this isn't possible anymore. We can't keep driving up here and paying for this place. We're on half an acre and in a rural area. So I technically didn't really need a business license, which is really interesting in the way it kind of works in this area. I was surprised too. And then I built a commercial kitchen in my garage. The way the plumbing was laid out, everything kind of worked. Talked to up here, it's the health safety guy, right? Through BC Health, and called him, got him to come out and do an inspection on it. They approved the kitchen because Barbara worked in kitchens. She knows exactly how to build a kitchen, right?
Yeah.
So they did all that. They got my compliance, and then we started doing all of our production from here. And by the end, the trucks are coming up the driveway, and we got one a week, and I'm giving my neighbors dressing to help them stay quiet so they don't complain on me.
Yeah.
But then it was I had 50 stores, and I would do it on Saturdays, and I was driving up and down the island like I didn't want to do. But now the distributor would talk to me. Yeah. So now they're like, oh, you got 50 stores. Oh, okay. So they took it on and started doing a little bit of distribution, got us over to the mainland where they have a truck that goes over every other day. Got a couple of stores on that side. And then out of the blue, I got a guy call me, and he goes, I want to take a run at Sobeys, which is our biggest distributor, our biggest store, right? And the other one's Save On Foods. And I was like, go for it. I don't know anything about the relationships and all this kind of stuff, right? So he gets it in, and I called up my other distributor, and I said, this guy's going to work with us too. And he's like, no, he's not. And I'm like, oh yeah, he is. And they said, well, if you're using him, then you're not using us anymore. And so obviously I kind of made that switch, right? Just because I didn't want to be tied into anything. Yeah. So I made the switch to a new guy, and they got us into about 350 stores over a year and a half.
Wow. Still
working out of our garage. And that lasted us till about 2021.
Wow. So that was all through COVID. I mean, I guess when you're producing out of your garage, that's a little bit of a benefit, I'm guessing, when a global pandemic happens, right? I mean, you walk out your garage and you do your production, and it makes it a lot easier, I guess, right?
Well, at that time we had a girl working with us. She couldn't come to work, but we just plugged away at it as much as we could, right? And then we just stored it in the shipping container and waited until people would pick it up again. But as soon as that lockdown was over, they wanted it so bad because all the shelves were empty, right?
Yeah.
We're the only product they could get, right? So it was so good for us. We almost doubled our whole business in that first 6 months of COVID.
Wow.
Just because now all of a sudden the bigger stores, Thrifties and all these larger chains, they want to talk to us because they're like, oh, these guys have product, we can get it, that kind of a thing. So it worked out really, really well for us. At that time, Thrifties, which is a 27-store chain right here on the island, they wanted to do a little ad. They do the local supplier type of, ad. And they were supposed to be coming out to film our little kitchen that we have here and do meet the founder and that kind of a thing. And that was right when COVID hit. They were just getting on the plane in Toronto to come and do their filming, and they couldn't get on the plane. So they didn't come. And then Thrifties did this huge ad campaign for us, as well as two other brands. But they had these huge banners. There were probably 6x6 banners up, probably 5 or 6 of them in each store. And they had multiple displays. They did YouTube promotions for us. They did all kinds of stuff for us on Instagram and social media. And now they're our best store because it just grows and grows and grows because of this local thing. So when we moved out of our kitchen in here, because obviously we outgrew it, and so we needed to rent, a little kitchen space down the road, 2,500 square feet, which we quickly ran out of space. we did 200,000 bottles out of our garage that year in 2021. Wow. Yeah. So it was kind of crazy. I had 3 shipping containers in the yard. And like I say, the trucks are coming every other day.
Yeah. I was just saying your neighbors probably were appreciative of the free dress. With it for sure.
Yeah. So then we moved into that place. And by the time we moved everything in, we're like, okay, this place is going to be too small too. So we worked in there for about 8 or 9 months and we moved everything to a co-packer in Vancouver. So we have a, contract manufacturer over there now. And so now it's easy to sell because we have unlimited production, right? So
yeah. Was that hard though, giving up you guys had been your baby, right? I mean, it's a very unique story of how you did build that in your own garage, right? But obviously the right way, and then a commercial kitchen, which we health inspect and everything else and all that. You don't always hear that when you hear people are making stuff in their garage, right? So you did the right way, because you and your wife have been so close to the product at that point, right? I know for me as a business owner, entrepreneur, it's sometimes really hard to give up control because you always think that you can do it better and nobody can do it better than you, right? And then that's obviously not the case. So walk us through that little thought process or journey, if you will.
It took us a little while to kind of let go. We did our first couple of SKUs, top SKUs first, and then we kind of held on to the lower selling SKUs for a while. It definitely added a cost, so it really crushed the margins a little bit at first, right? So needed more volume to make that work. Because Barbara was doing production and I was basically doing everything else, and so she was pretty tired. So like you say, getting up at 4 and getting things ready for when employees get there so that they can do their thing. And the employees we had, they're all like local people and they have kids and they want to be done by 2 so they can pick up their kids. And, and we're trying to be as accommodating as we can, so we don't have to hire full-time people out of our garage,
Yep.
So she would come in or start early and then stay late to clean up after everybody's gone near the end. So she was pretty tired. So it wasn't too bad for let that kind of stuff go. And mine didn't really change much. I was still just doing CEO stuff. Trying to get more business. So, but they have all the food scientists and stuff on there, right, on staff. So it's like the safety level is probably significantly higher. They're an SQF facility. They have all the FDA approvals and stuff like that because that's where we're kind of moving now is into California and to the States and stuff. So all that, something that I didn't have to kind of go through that process of doing. So
it sounds like a lot of great things are happening one after another. So you get to the co-packer, then word of the business. What was around 21? It was 21, you said? 2021?
Yeah, that was the end of 2021, beginning of 2022, where we kind of transitioned that over, yeah. Then I switched from that distributor that got us to 350 stores because they were a local guy, right? And I mean, it's kind of hard because you have this little bit of loyalty that you got to the guy that helped you grow from 50 to 350 stores.
Yeah.
But you got to do what's right for the business, right? So it's like we had to kind of make a change and go to a national distributor. And they took us in a year and a half, they took us from 350 to just about 1,100 stores. So the growth is crazy, right, for that. I mean, of course, because we added on the co-packer and whatnot, it doesn't translate as much into profits as it would had we done it ourselves. But then I would have to buy a facility. So it's the same.
Yeah, all the cash is going back into new production. I mean, it's a good problem to have, but it's definitely a problem for sure.
That's right. Exactly. It's a cash flow problem.
Yep. If you look, go back to your story and your trajectory, right, of where the brand started. I mean, the genesis point of the brand and the farmers markets, and it sounds like you had 2 constants, and one you really didn't mention, and one I kind of heard through the stories, and I'll just kind of call those out. Number one, a great product, right? Like it's like obviously if you're getting the kind of business you're getting and you've got people that repeat purchases and high lifetime value and all that good stuff. I mean, if people love the product, they're going to seek it out. They're going to find it. They're going to buy it, and they're going to buy it again and again. And it's, obviously a salad dressing is a a condiment you always want to have. When you find those favorite ones, you always have them at home, right? They're a staple of your pantry or your fridge, and that's where you always have them. The second thing that not to be lost, a great product, right? The second thing I think is, you talk about those early times and even growing the business. Obviously, you and I have just kind of getting to know each other here, Paul, but like I could just kind of tell that a lot of people were in your corner and wanting you to succeed. They were helping you along the way, right? You mentioned like people from the school, marketing, and, the website guy and everybody else, right? And your neighbors, and like a lot of that goes a long way with people, right? Because they're willing to help you. They're willing to put up with the trucks with lift gates coming into the neighborhood or whatever, to either to unload raw ingredients or load finished product, whatever it may be, right? So I think that says something for both you and your wife. I'm sure your wife is very much the same, where people are willing to help out and people want to see you guys succeed and they're cheering for you, rooting for you, right?
Yeah, totally. And that's, like you say, that's a part of our core values too. So we sat down and did all those a couple of years ago as well. And we were just like, what is it? Like, what is it that this company is? Like, what do we do? That kind of a thing. And I think that, respect and kindness is the big part of that, right? Sure. Just having the understanding. And I mean, we're not young anymore, and we're not trying to grind here for cash. It's about doing something that's a little bit what I think everybody kind of feels like they want to do, right? It's inside somewhere deep down where you want to just prove that, hey man, this can be done. Like even today, these days, I hear people saying, oh yeah, all that, you can't do it anymore. It's not possible to start a company and with $2,500, that's all we started with, and grow it into a multi-million-dollar company. It's like, well, it can. I'm doing it.
Yeah. You're living proof. Yes. Yeah.
I think people like that, right? And I think that if we can do it in a humble way and just, make sure that we include the community in it, it's a big part of, the support you get from everybody, right?
Yeah, for sure. So walk us through the different SKUs you do have.
Yeah, so we have an original, they're nutritional yeast dressing, right? So nutritional yeast has that nutty, cheesy kind of a flavor. I think most people don't know it, but in the vegan community, it's pretty big. They use it as a cheese substitute, and it's super high in protein, and it's a complete protein, which means that you don't have to add anything else to it, and it's full of B vitamins, right? So, but it's this cheesy, nutty flavor that we kind of really like, and it kind of gives this umami kind of edge to it. So the original one, it's really hard to explain. It's like one of those kinds of things where you got to put it in your mouth to be able to appreciate the value of it.
Sure.
And then one of them is a ginger sesame. They're all based on the same original. So original with the ginger sesame. There's a smoky chipotle, which is really kind of, it's like a barbecue-y kind of sauce. Like you say, it's a vegan dressing, but people tell us all the time they're putting it on chicken and dipping whatever into it, right? So we had those three for the longest time. Those were our first three SKUs. And then Barbara decided this was a COVID project when we were kind of shut down for those 2 weeks. She came up with a Caesar. So she made a Caesar. We found anchovy flavoring that's vegan, a natural vegan flavoring. So that worked out. That was kind of the kicker for being able to create a good Caesar. And then just recently she made a ranch. So those are the 5 dressing SKUs. And then we're selling the nutritional yeast on the side as well as just 2 different flavors of that. One's original, and then there's a roasted garlic parm, which is pretty new kind of flavor nutritional yeast.
I saw those on your side. How do you like categorize those? Are those like seasonings or like toppers? Like what would somebody be putting those on? Would you say, or like what do you see? What do you like to put them on?
It's interesting you say that because that's what buyers say too, right? So So I get to a buyer in a store, they're like, well, where do I put this in the store? So some of them are putting it with popcorn because a lot of people put it on popcorn. Yeah. And some of them are putting it as salad toppers, probably because we're salad dressing.
Really?
But it is more of a seasoning. And, other brands carry it. There's a couple of other brands that have it. And they usually put it in the baking aisle or the seasoning aisle. So, but yeah, it's seasoning definitely for like, you can put it in soups or you can sprinkle that on popcorn or on a pizza or just on broccoli.
That's great. And so, again, as you kind of look at your trajectory, right, and this amazing growth you've had over the past, call it 7-ish years, right? What were some points where maybe some setbacks, right, or some things where like, oh man, this is going to be the end of it, or was there any times like that where maybe not as dramatic as, this is the end of it, but like, how are we going to get through this? Like anything like that stick out in your mind one or two times?
Well, like you say, mostly the growth kind of a thing. Cash flow is a big one, right? Having trouble with cash flow. I did a capital raise a couple of years ago. I'm in the middle of another capital raise to, for the U.S. expansion type of thing. But yeah, I think mostly cash and, trying to get to that. There's like a weird barrier that you've got to cross. It's like crossing the blood-brain barrier or something. It's like you're like making a bunch of cash, but you can't seem to break through this barrier. And then if you do, well, you got to hire somebody to help you. And then, of course, that drains your cash. Right?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Or hire a team to do it. So that's where we're at right now. But that's the biggest one, I think.
Yeah. Cash flow can break a business and make a business. It's definitely one of those things that you need to control as much as you can, but also just know your cash flow is half the battle, I feel like.
Yeah, exactly.
When you look ahead for you and Barbara and the business, like what's on deck in the next year to 5 years? Like, where do you see I know you mentioned U.S. expansion, so tell us a little bit more about that.
So we have distribution. So we went to Expo. I don't know if you've been to Expo West.
Oh yeah.
Expo West, the booth we had wasn't in a good position. We were behind the supplements, which was not good. But the relationships that we built from networking at Expo was probably significantly more valuable.
Yep.
And so out of those, we ended up with distribution in the Pacific Northwest through a regional distributor there. And we've done like presentations for Fred Meyer. We've done presentations for Reilly's because we were focusing on the West Coast first before we move in. Of course, you're going to accept the opportunities like Sprouts and Whole Foods and these that come along as they do, right?
Yep.
And then we just like literally last week on Friday, apparently he likes to give us good news on Friday. Gelston told us that they're going to take all 5 SKUs in all stores. So
wow.
Gelston's is a 27 store chain right in LA.
Awesome.
So which comes with the UNFI distribution deal for Southern California. I guess that puts it in their warehouse down there. So that'll be big for us. And moving forward from that, I think we're just going to kind of plug away and see if we can get to the goal, which was all 40 lower states. I had a guy ask me what I wanted with the brand. This was early on.
Yeah.
And I said, I think I want to sell in Florida. And he's like, well, why Florida? I'm like, well, because that's like the furthest distance.
The opposite of North America, right? Yeah.
All the way either across and down or down and across, right?
Good.
And he laughed and he says, well, you could probably let that kind of dream go because, you're just a small brand. It's a little bit of a driving force. It's not the real whole reason why I'm doing that, but it's like now it's like exactly like I said before. Can it be done with $2,500? So we'll see.
Yeah.
So kind of like a little bit of a personal mission.
I was going to say, I hope you have a map of Florida, like the outline of the state of Florida somewhere on your wall or desk in front of you, maybe, or if not, you should get one, right? Print it out and put a picture of your logo on top of it. And I'm sure the way things are going, I mean, you guys have had some amazing growth. Sounds like over the short history of the brand. I mean, there's no short or long, everybody's different, but like, I think you're on your way to Florida faster than you probably realize,
And it's the thing is too, is that it seems like, 7 years isn't a short period of time, but again, it's like, I don't want to jump in too fast. I mean, I've seen stories of brands actually from Victoria and they grow and they go public or something like that. And then next thing you know, they're gone.
Yep.
And I'm like, well, no, I want to fully understand exactly the market before I move too fast into it. Like I want to understand California before I start talking about moving into Florida, I got to understand the US market and how they're different than here, right?
Yeah.
Consumers are different. People buy differently. More likely they're the same on the West Coast as us, but let's work that first and then we'll see where we go.
That's a great transition to the next question. Like we talk about the marketing positioning of the brand, right? Like obviously you started the brand from this unique circumstance you had personally, right? And this need and desire for wanting to have this amazing dressing yourself, right? Selfishly, but and that turned into a great business. But like, how much is it like you want to be identified as like vegan or gluten-free dressing, right? Compared to just like amazing product. How do you balance those two like on a daily basis?
I think it goes back to those core values, right? So one of our core values is that everything we make is going to be gluten-free, obviously, right?
Yep.
So we make unbelievably delicious gluten-free food, right? So that's the big part of that core value. And obviously we want to see as a gluten-free food company. But we also want to be seen as a local company, but we want to be able to be big enough that we can have the respect of people from that big company perspective, but we want the consumers to expect us to be act like a small local company. And I know that everybody kind of wants that, but I feel like that's something that we can kind of do while Barbara and I are still involved, and it may change if we're not anymore at some point, but that's something I feel like you could pick up the phone and call Yeshi and somebody will answer the phone, right? You're not going to get a machine. Well, maybe you'll get a machine, but we'll call you back, that kind of thing. Whereas like other big brands that have sold to bigger companies, there's not even a number that you can call on their website.
Yeah.
It's an email, right?
Yep.
So speaking of Florida, I want to be able to like walk into a store, talk to the manager and say, hey, my name is Paul. I'm from Yeshi Foods. And they're like, oh, you guys are a local company, are you? That kind of a feeling, And we want to try and support that as much as we can. For instance, one of the plans that Barbara and I are going to do is when we load into the Gelsons, we want to go down there and do demos in every one of their stores ourselves, Barbara and I, right? So we're at the point right now where we have a team working with us, and why wouldn't we do that? I mean, we don't live in California. We'll go there in the wintertime.
Hey, yeah, it's good. Let's go in January.
Yeah, that's right.
Fascinating conversation here, Paul. Fascinating story you and Barbara have had. But give us maybe one final piece of advice or aspiring entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs who are growing a brand, CPG brand like you guys have. Any kind of thing that resonates from your experience you want to share?
I'm a jiu-jitsu guy. Okay. They're not all gold, obviously, but I think that doing like something like jiu-jitsu helps you become humble, because you're going to get hit a bunch of times with lots of no's. There's going to be lots of failures. Jiu-jitsu teaches you that you can fail gracefully, and because you're failing every time you're in a class, you're failing, and you got to learn to get over that really quickly. Also, being able to just start, right? So they say the hardest thing in jiu-jitsu is to walk into the class, walk into a room of a bunch of people that can beat the hell out of you. It's just the most intimidating thing. It's the same thing with the business. Just starting is the hardest part. Getting past your fears of commitment to the business and just doing it, and it'll go wherever it goes. And just have fun with it, play it like it's a game.
The starting is the hardest part sometimes, and once you get the momentum behind you, like you guys have, it's hard to stop it in a good way. Like it keeps you going with momentum, and so awesome. Well, Paul, thanks so much for sharing the story of Yeshi and your personal story and the success you and Barbara have had. And last but certainly not least, where can people find Yeshi? You mentioned already some of the stores, but give us the quick rundown in Canada, the US, where can people find it?
In Canada, we are in basically all of the Sobeys in the West. We're in Longo's, we're in Loblaws in the East, and we're in Save On Foods and multiple independents across the West Coast. Moving down into right now, it's just independents in the Pacific Northwest. Not too many of them. We only just shipped our first order. And then coming up, Gelson's and hopefully some of the other larger retailers around California, or on our website, www.yeshifoods.com.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Well, people have to pick up a bottle either at their local retailer or order online. And I guess that we can get the word out there sooner rather than later. They'll be in Florida before you know it. So
perfect. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. What a great episode with Paul Kleinschmidt from Yeshi Foods. Thanks so much to Paul for coming on the program today, sharing his unique story, him and his wife, Barbara, building this fantastic brand throughout Canada and obviously reaching into the States and, again, soon to be Florida here. So looking forward to seeing what to have Paul back on in celebration when he does finally reach Florida. And it could be, again, sooner than we think here. So, again, thanks for Paul for coming on today. And if you have found value in this episode, please send it to somebody. Please share it with somebody. Send it to them via email, text, and say, hey, listen to this podcast. It's fantastic. The guy, Ryan, is amazing. The host. But the stories are really great. That's why hopefully you're joining the story, the practical advice, the expertise you're getting just from these conversations. It's really eye-opening. So please like it, share it, subscribe, rate us, review us, wherever you're listening or watching this. It really helps grow the podcast. And we will look forward to another great conversation, some great insight expertise on the next episode of the Expert CPG Commerce Podcast.